Welcome back. Another in our series of what's going on in the community. We've got a definite treat today. We have George Clayton Owens, who's currently the trustee for District 6 for West Florida Electric Cooperative. When we come back, we're going to talk to George about what is West Florida Electric Cooperative, why should it be important to you, and if you are a member, the upcoming election. This is an opportunity for you to choose your representatives who are going to make those decisions for you for the next several years. George up for re-election this year after many years in that office. And when we come back, we're going to talk about all this and more, and we will be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is George Clayton Owens. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Appreciate you.
Now, you are up for re-election as the trustee for District 6 for West Florida Electric Cooperative. What is West Florida Electric Cooperative?
It's a group of districts starting in Calhoun County, Bluntstown area, out the oldest needs into Jackson County, Washington County, and Holmes County.
Okay.
And we provide service for about 20,000 rural homes and businesses for electrical service, and try to do it just as reliable as we can and as economically as we can.
You know, people complain about their power bill. They complain if there's a brownout. They complain if a car hits a pole and their power's out for a little while. But they don't go very long without needing that air conditioning or that refrigeration. Electrical service is just one of those things in life that literally we can't do without anymore. Electricity changed the world when it was invented, and I think that right now we're probably at an all-time consumption rate for that power. What does West Florida Electric do to ensure that they're going to have enough power going forward for whatever circumstances present themselves, George?
We buy our power from Power South out of Andalusia, Alabama. They have 33 substations in our district, and they provide the service to the substation. We pick it up at the substation and run it out on the three-phase and the transmission lines, then tap it off to the houses. So we are in a long-term contract with them. We got involved with them several years ago, and they have been a reliable supplier and have helped West Florida expand our territory and our business.
We recently experienced over the last year and a half, Hurricane Michael. Probably impacted this part of Florida more than any storm in the past. It's been officially recognized as a Category 5 storm that came ashore. Lots of power outage. Remarkably, that service was restored very timely. You couldn't ride around without seeing the bucket trucks, without seeing these dedicated men and women who work for all of the utilities, but certainly West Florida Electric Cooperative. I would think that you would agree with me when we say that they're probably an unappreciated group of people.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I tell them that the board of directors is just a financial advisory arm and the public relations. The man they're really interested in seeing is the man driving the white truck, because his young'un plays ball with their young'un. They go to church with their young'uns, and that's who they consider West Florida Electric. Now, if they can't get service, they will call a board member or talk to a board member, but our goal is to see that the CEO of this company has the necessary funding and direction to keep the lights on. And we, up until the storm hit, we had a very good outage rate. We were out very little. Short outages, we've fused a bunch of the lines and done some backfeeding and several things through the system that makes it much more reliable. We can have an outage off of a three-phase, and of course it knocks everybody out when you're putting a transmission line out. But as long as you're working in the areas that we work in, with the tree trimming business that we have employed, We keep the right-of-way clear, 15 feet on each side of the line. Now, that's been a problem since Michael because there's still some leaners, and this rainy, windy weather, we get some trees on the line. But normally our rate of service per hour, per kilowatt hour is always real good.
I know that you consistently have a program of rehab for your hardware, your poles, your transmission lines, so that you are always up to speed. And unfortunately, we can't predict when we have a natural disaster such as Hurricane Michael. But many times just a strong storm, a small twister, that kind of thing impacts you, at least on a local level. Have you ever seen anything impact your service like Hurricane Michael did?
No, I've never seen anything impact this region like Hurricane Michael did. We were in Atlanta, Georgia in school with the co-op when it hit. And the last thing we heard before we went to bed was it was coming in at Mexico Beach as a 2. When we woke up the next morning, it had hit Mexico Beach as a 4. And it really did, just devastated Gulf Coast Electric, West Florida Electric, had an impact on Talcon Electric, Wiregrass Electric, all of the adjoining co-ops. It really hurt us. We borrowed $80 million to rebuild the system. The system was down. There's 4,800 miles of line in the 4 counties. There's about 20,000 customers that are currently taking electricity. We have about 26 or 8,000 customers, and some of them, their house was devastated to the point they can't take electricity. And until they can get permitted and rebuild or repair, then we'll turn them back on as soon as it's safe for them to be back with power. But it really devastated this area economically, mentally. It affected our boys. We lost a lineman in an unforeseen accident, on the road, and it was just a tough deal for everybody at West Florida.
You take that loan that you had to take out, which was certainly a goodly amount, and divide it by your consumers, and all you would have to do to recoup that loan is to charge each of them their proportionate share. Unfortunately, you can't do that. So you take it on the chin, you have to amortize that over a period of time. Most people don't realize that. They complain when they get a few cents per kilowatt hour go up on their power bill, but they don't understand what it actually takes. They think you guys are getting rich, and maybe even you as a trustee, get some kind of a piece of that pie. Again, we are quick to complain about our power bill, but when the electricity goes out on a hot July day, we'll do whatever it takes to get that power turned back on.
Well, if you stop and think about it, Paul, electric service is the cheapest bargain you get. And if you don't believe it, you do just what you're saying. You let it get out in July and you're trying to get a bath and it's 100 degrees outside and 100% humidity, you just burn up. And none of the homes today are built for not having central heat and air. They're well insulated and you have very little cross flow of air if you let the windows up. And so it's just a situation where if you're going to have a dishwasher, a stove, a washing machine, a refrigerator, and a deep freeze, and an air conditioner, and a well, you've got to have it.
And a couple teenage girls with hair dryers.
That's right.
That meter's almost spinning off the side of the building. You said that West Florida Electric Cooperative is made up of 9 individual districts over which there is one trustee for each of those districts. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you've got an election every year and 1/3 of your membership changes. So it's a 3-year term basically.
That's right.
How long have you been a trustee?
9 years.
So you've gone through three cycles, if you will.
Right.
You probably don't necessarily look forward to re-election time every 3 years. I know that that's probably true. You're well thought of. You're a figurehead in the community, certainly. You're a pillar of the community when it comes to the farming and the cattle business. You've got silviculture. You've broken new ground when it comes to some of that technology. I would imagine being a trustee is a labor of love. I can't imagine any amount of money making it worthwhile, and I can't imagine how many calls you got following this big storm, let alone any kind of small blower that we have come through. Why do you continue to serve in that capacity?
Well, I'm on the advisory committee for the local extension office, and I'm a trustee at the First Baptist Church, and I just believe in giving back to the community. And this is an opportunity where I can serve my fellow citizens and do them a service. And I can assure you that I spend the co-op money the same way I spend George Owens' money. And if you don't have good business people who have a track record, you can get in trouble in a hurry borrowing $82 million. But we could see that we had the Power South come down and do a rate study, and that we could have a storm surcharge just like Gulf Power and Gulf Coast and everybody else has, and recoup enough money to pay the interest on the loan. We're applying to FEMA for some reimbursement, and we'll work ourselves out of this with good sound management. We have some trucks in our fleet that are 15 years old, and I'd like to see them replaced, but it doesn't make sense to borrow more money to replace a truck that's still running.
Sure.
So a businessman that can manage his own personal affairs and economics makes a good board member.
Now, I would imagine that there's a certain amount of education that goes into that process. So once somebody is elected, and if they're indeed a freshman trustee at that point, that there's some sort of education or classes that they have to go to?
You bet. You have to get your co-op credentials, which is a 5-day course within the first 3 years. Then you have an opportunity to go on and get what is called board leadership credentials, which I have. And also, if you finish those and are still interested in furthering your education in how to manage a co-op and be a good board member, you can go for what is called Director Gold. That's additional 5 days. But I have the highest educational achievement that you can get as a board of directors. I've been to all the schools.
It would seem like there would be a huge brain trust in that small core group that have been there the longest period of time. It doesn't make sense to change horses in midstream, to use an old analogy, but especially with this kind of debt service that you're trying to manage, with FEMA operations that you're trying to deal with, I would imagine your collective 9 years really comes in handy when you're dealing with these kinds of situations.
It does, because there's a system called the rate, and you have to balance your rate with your demand, and you have to make adjustments to your budget. We work on a 5-year work plan. Like if we're going to upgrade a line or replace poles or insulators, we put it in what's known as a 5-year work plan. We borrow money from RUS to fund that work plan, and over 5 years we may spend $1 million a year upgrading the system, because if you don't, the pole rots off and falls. Then nobody's got any electricity. So it's a complex ordeal. It's not something that you learn overnight, and it's not something that's easy to manage, because when Michael came in, we were economically stable and good shape as far as the co-op was concerned. We had an ample workforce. We had fairly modern equipment, and things were going real good. But within 24 hours, it was all gone. That was history. We brought in 1,600 workers from as far away as Paris, Texas, up to South Carolina, all across the state of Florida and Alabama and Georgia, Mississippi. And these guys would go to the substation and take a line and work it out, because they're trained just like our people are trained. The number one goal of West Florida Electric Board of Trustees is safety. We want every man to go home every night. Now, he may work all night if there's a storm, but we want him to go home. Electricity is very unforgiving, and you don't make but one mistake, and then you've history. And if we were to lose a man, just like we lost Bo from an auto accident, the guy ran over him, I expect that cost our co-op $1 million. So now we had trained him. He was a 30-year man. We had trained him, worked him, contributed to his 401k, and helped provide his health insurance. So all those factors have to be figured in when you're talking about what it costs to run a co-op.
That's quite a fraternity of people professionally. I know that you send people off to other locations when your sister organizations have similar catastrophes. How many folks have you got at West Florida Electric Cooperative that are in that workforce that keep the power flowing?
The ones that keep it going is probably no more than 25 linemen, might be 30 at times. But we have support staff for the warehouse and purchasing and HR, and just like any other corporation would have. But the men that actually put on the hooks and belts and do the work, out of those buckets or climbing, we probably have 25 or 30.
I know that wasn't that long ago, you were instrumental in ensuring that there was a cost of living increase to be able to reward these people, and that's probably the wrong word, but to at least try to make an attempt to pay them what they're worth. I don't think, and tell me if you agree with this or not, but I don't think there's any way to pay them what they're worth ever. But I know that you were instrumental in trying to at least give them a little bit more in the form of a raise. You took some heat for it. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's typical. You know, everybody knows how to ride the bull except the man with him between his legs. You get in one of those buckets and it's 20-mile-an-hour wind and raining down your coat, the price becomes immaterial. And I told him, I said, if you don't want to take care of these men, and we have union workers where there's a built-in raise. They know what they're going to get. And if we don't negotiate that union contract and give them a raise, there's a company down the road that will, or a private concern that will. And in order to keep quality trained people, you have to pay them. And you're right, we don't pay them enough. When you put your life on the line, 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, or at midnight, it raining, lightning striking a quarter of a mile down the line, there's not a dollar figure to put on that.
When you get a man with 3 years experience, let alone 30, you don't want to lose that man.
That's right. You can't afford to lose him. You've got too much invested in him. And our workforce is West Florida Electric. They don't know me. They don't care about me. They just know there's a position called a director. The man they know is the man driving the white truck. They know his first name, his last name, his cell phone number, and if something goes wrong, that's who they call, because they know he knows the system and can get their current back on their house.
George, you've always been a working man. Your hands are usually roughed up and dirty. You may have some stuff on your shoes and your pants from walking around those cows and what have you. But because of that, you truly appreciate those working men. And I've known you a while, and I've recognized that in you the whole time. Best of luck going forward. I can't imagine that, just like you wouldn't want to lose somebody with years of experience as a lineman, you wouldn't want to lose somebody as a trustee with that kind of experience that you bring to the table. We always give people an opportunity when they're on the show to look right into the camera lens and to talk to those voters. How about looking right in there and telling these people that are co-op members, that are members of that West Florida Electric Cooperative, exactly why you should go back into that office?
If you're a member of West Florida Electric, I know you have enjoyed an excellent service as far as the number of hours of outage. You've experienced some very cordial and friendly people, whether it's a staking engineer or a lineman or a repairman. And I would like to ask you to keep experience on your side. Vote for George Clayton Owens as trustee for District 6. And I'll continue to make every effort I can to see that you get the electricity you need, as reliable as it can be made, at as cheap a price as we can sell it.
Well said. Says it all. Is there anything that we haven't talked about, George, about the co-op in general that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I during the last storm, I had a doctor friend in Bonifay, whose lights were out, been out for 9 hours. He called me and he said, "George, can you find out when they're going to turn my lights on?" I said, "Yeah, I can find out, approximately when." He said, "Well, there's a swamp full of water between my house and the line." I said, "I know that." He said, "Whatever you paying them boys is not enough." He said, "I came back from town about an hour ago and they were in a bucket, it raining down the back of their neck and the wind blowing. And he said, there's not enough money. Now, he's a doctor. He said, there's not enough money to get me in that box, in that bucket, to help those guys. Well, about 30 minutes after that, he called and said the lights were on. Now, I had nothing to do with it. I couldn't even get the computer system up and determine where they were, because we have a computer system that the directors have, and when a storm comes up, we can see who's out, if it's at your house or at Fred's house or Tom's house. We can tell that from that computer screen on that graphic. And I knew he was out, but when it comes back on, the dispatch takes it off, takes the side off, and you show that it's hot. But it's a rewarding job. The boys love their job. They'll work 18 hours a day if it's required. You never hear a word out of them. And that commitment that they make to the customer base is the same commitment that I make to them. And I want to make the same commitment to the customer base that they make, that as long as the lights are on, we're fine. But when the lights are off, I want somebody looking at it.
Your annual meeting is April 25th, I believe, at which point all of your membership is invited to that. You've got a meal that you serve.
Right.
Your annual meeting goes on. I know your ballots go out prior to that, but that's the day upon which that they make the decision of who the winner of those particular races are.
That's right.
Best of luck going forward. Thanks so much for taking the time and joining with us today.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to learn more about you and certainly about West Florida Electric Cooperative. So hopefully you'll join us again soon.
Thank you.
Our guest today has been George Clayton Owens, a longtime member of the community, a pillar of the community, for 9 years serving as that trustee for West Florida Electric Cooperative, up for re-election right now. We don't miss an opportunity to say thank a serviceman every chance that you get. And I think I would like to add a caveat to that. Thank those linemen when you see them too. They probably mean more to you than you realize. We'll be right back.